Welcome to the Oxygen Advantage podcast with your host, Oxygen Advantage founder Patrick McKeown. With the Oxygen Advantage podcast, we aim to show how functional breathing is an essential part of a healthy and well-balanced lifestyle. Each episode, we meet experts in their field from around the world and talk about their lives, their experiences, and how they learned the importance of breathing. Join us and get inspired. Get the Oxygen Advantage.
Many people say it's impossible to breathe through your nose during physical exercise. I want to challenge that. And Ihor has been so kind to join me. And I would probably say, Ihor, in terms of what you've accomplished, if people are in the ultra running world or the ultramarathon world, they will know of you. You've achieved some of the highest feats that are possible. And I came across you by accident. It was actually through one of our instructors. And then I read an article in the magazine about your secret weapon. So listen, I'd love to get a little bit of background information. You're originally you're from the Ukraine, and you're living in Canada. And just a little bit of background information, because I think anybody who is interested in running, you have to listen to this podcast.
Thanks, Patrick. Born and raised in Ukraine. Lived there for just over 20 years. Then there was an opportunity as a student to come over to Canada, Manitoba. It's like a central province in the middle of Canada. Came over to Canada as I was 21, and I stayed here ever since. Haven't been back home yet. And then I got into running probably a year after I landed in Canada. It started as a mental health tool. I was looking for something to help me out, to process and to kind of clear off my head as I was navigating through these challenges of new country, new language, new culture. And running came off as an affordable sport to do so. You don't need much investment to get into it. And so I started doing some road runs and here and there, and sign up for a local race, and did pretty well in it. And it kind of kept growing from there. And eventually, when pandemic happened, I had to transition to trails, just because running on the sidewalks wasn't sort of appropriate. You're supposed to self-isolate, but at the same time, if you're in trails by yourself, you can kind of escape that. And I found my solace there. I found my happy spot there. And ever since I discovered trails, never went back to the roads or road running. And eventually ran into like-minded people, and they basically told me more about the world of ultra running, because by then I didn't even know that people could potentially go over the marathon distance. And from there, I'm like, okay, so I guess we can keep going, and, we can run hills, we can run mountains, and trails are so much more fun. And I kept exploring that avenue, started doing longer distances, eventually moved to Western Canada, closer to the mountains. And we have an abundance of beautiful trails right in my backyard. And I kept building up and growing myself as an ultra runner, sign up for these races, did relatively well in most of them, and here I am. And speaking of, I guess, the breathing and Buteyko method, and where your book I came across when I was still doing roads, I guess, at that point. And I did this long run, where it's a 50K run, and I remember as I finished it, I felt like my chest muscles were about to explode. And my head, I thought, like, why would my chest muscles hurt so bad? And, I would think legs would hurt, but I was breathing so hard, and I felt exhausted just from breathing. And I usually like to spend a lot of time going down to the bottom of every single part that creates running or builds running, including nutrition, strength, physical training, also respiratory system. So I was like, am I doing something wrong? Am I breathing wrong, or what's happening? And later on, I discovered that I was just over breathing, and I was doing it wrong, and came across your book, and it was the first thing I purchased, and I just devoured it. And then obviously I came across the person, the professor on whose studies it was built, right? You just developed it and translated it and just explained it to the world. And I was like, oh, wait a second. He was born in Ukraine and then, well, Soviet Union back then. And then he moved to Russian Soviet Republic and then worked in Russia after that. I was like, well, can I find more about him? Like if he was writing in Russian, I do read Russian. Maybe I can actually, get a bit more information on that. So I started, digging in all the resources available for me in web and came across his work, in original language. And I read it and was like, okay, well, I guess Patrick didn't lie. He was, he told the truth in his book. And reading that and seeing how many kids, he healed, or basically for whom asthma was gone just by changing the way of breathing, it was astonishing to me. And I was questioning myself, why isn't it taught, in schools or universities, or why isn't it a pillar of any athlete? Why we all talk about nutrition, we talk about, running schedule, strength training, but what about breathing? Like this is the thing that's probably one of the most, if not the most important part, because eventually if your lungs collapse and you can't breathe anymore, it doesn't matter how good fuel yourself or how strong you are. If you can't breathe well or efficiently and effectively, well, you're not going to go far. And yeah, so I started exploring it more and more, reading more, and started applying all the techniques described by you in the book. And yeah, I at first I did not notice any changes, but again, it's all about consistency, building up, just like with anything else, over weeks, over months. And eventually when it became kind of second nature, breathing with nose, not using your mouth, uh, I saw a huge difference. And I always share it with my friends. It's not easy. Like we're so used to breathing with our mouths, we're so used to over breathing, that it's really hard to transition back to what is actually our noses or our bodies were built for. Like if you I tend to believe that everything that our body has its reason. Like there is reason for everything, starting from your hair to your nails, and then nose is there for a reason. So if we're breathing with our mouths, like what is it for? So thousands and 10,000 years of you know uh, genetic growth and evolving it, like there is a reason there for a nose, right? Like, so why would we use it? And after definitely learning from your book how many benefits uh, and perks of breathing with your nose is there, I realized that, okay, well, why would we go against our nature, do something like mouth breathing if we can actually use nose, what it was created for, what we have it for, and, improve our life or make it actually normal, you know?
It's amazing, very all of the things that you spoke about there, I resonate with. And sometimes it is a little bit bewildering why even the sports medicine scientists and sports physiologists haven't investigated nose breathing during physical exercise. You are by far the outlier. I know if you went into a gym, if you went and did a study of any group of individuals doing any sort of physical exercise, at least 95% of them are mouth breathing. And there are few studies on it. And it comes back to the points that you mentioned. Our mouth does nothing for breathing. There is nothing in the mouth. Like when you think about our teeth, our tongue, hard palate, soft palate, throat, none of those things do anything for breathing. I think in your world, we'll just dial back a little bit again. I think a lot of people get into running for mental health, and there's kind of, I don't want to, because I want to really get your experience, but yeah, I won't go down there because I could talk about improving blood flow to the brain and all of that. So say, for example, because I don't want to talk, I want you to talk. Um, a runner who mouth breathes versus a runner who breathes through their nose with mental health, it will nose breathing improves blood flow to the brain and oxygen delivery, and nose breathing has better recruitment of the diaphragm, which will have a calming effect on the mind. So we change brain states by nose breathing during physical exercise than mouth breathing, but this isn't my talk. When you first, I think you were lucky enough that you kind of asked a question, not lucky, maybe, but you asked a question. You had sore ribs and sore chest from breathing, and then you started to wonder what's going on here. And you came across nose breathing. Was it quite tough when you first switched from mouth to nose breathing? And did you wear a nasal dilator, or did you just use did you have no devices?
Yeah, it was really awkward to change to nose breathing at first. So you do kind of have to force yourself a little bit at the beginning until it becomes natural to you. Again, just like with anything else, when you're trying to change your stride as you're running, or if you're trying to, say, change your diet at the beginning, it might feel forced and you might feel hungry, or, no matter what you do. But eventually, it becomes a habit after a certain number of days if you keep doing it. And now it's hard for me to do it otherwise,
How long did it
So
take you, do you think? So the first, can you describe, so the first week, did you go out, did you suddenly switch from mouth to nose breathing, or did you kind of say, well, I'm going to do part of this run today with my mouth closed and maybe part with my mouth open? How did you transition? I know
yeah,
you
I
probably,
force it.
if you don't want to give any secrets, don't worry,
I
but
mean,
it's
it's
just to
not a
tease it
secret.
out.
If it can help people, I am a huge advocate of that. And your book, I have like a bunch of copies of your books, and I gift it to all my friends,
Wow.
saying, hey, just make it your running Bible, or one of those running Bibles
Wow.
for yourself, and just read it. Do your best. Even I gave it to my friend whose child has asthma too. So it's not only for the athletes. It's to have better lifestyle. You'll see the difference. It's going to change your life drastically. But yeah, going back to your question, it probably took at least a month. It was weird. So I didn't kind of take turns mouth or nose. What I did, I had to slow down.
Yes.
So actually breathing with your nose makes you kind of slow down. It's because that it drops your heart rate significantly. So, and eventually I built it up again where my fitness improved, and I was able to do it with my nose with that pace that I had before. And again, just like you said, improves the blood flow. That it's um, builds the nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. So it definitely increases that sensation, feeling of good. So that your run is actually kind of getting more enjoyable. And to an extent, when we're talking about runner's high, you get it faster, and maybe you're getting it even longer term. So you can surf the wave for very, very long. This is another reason why I love nose breathing during the long-term races or efforts. I know that it keeps my heart rate down. It keeps my heart rate where I want it to be, where it's burning fats mostly, where it's not overusing the system. So I don't use the watch
So you're
or heart
using,
rate monitor.
you don't use your watch, so you're using the rate of perceived exertion via
That's
the sensation of air hunger or discomfort that you're experiencing during your breathing, and you know what zone you're in. Do you go by
that.
the zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
It's all perceived effort. People many often ask me like, what heart rate zone are you running it? I
Yeah,
always say, well, if I need to open my mouth, I run too fast.
correct.
Simple.
Great, absolutely
And
brilliant. Because everybody has different heart rates, so not you can't
yeah,
always do the
exactly.
same heart rate for everybody.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like if again during the race, if I need to make a surge, or say I need to make a move on the competitor, or there's this big hill that I want to attack, that's okay. My heart rate goes up, and I actually have to use eventually my mouth. But for most of the time when I'm cruising, I'll stick to my nose breathing. And again, and if I make that surge and then I need to recover, I start nose breathing because I know that my heart rate is gonna go down, and I know that I'm not redlining anymore. With that heart rate, sometimes you can feel like you can go forever and for days, for nights. What I've been doing in some of the races.
It's almost that it's like a conservation of energy. So you're using your nose to pace yourself so that you're not wasting energy unnecessary. And I suppose the other thing about Ihor is that people often talk about the oxygen or the air that's coming into the lungs, but they don't think about that oxygen transferring from the lungs to the blood, which will improve with nose breathing versus mouth breathing.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about the transfer of oxygen from the blood to the working muscles, which improves with nose breathing. So even though your VO2, so your oxygen consumption with nose breathing is typically less than with mouth breathing, but your body is much more efficient at using that oxygen so that you get by with doing the same physical exercise with less ventilation. And
Yeah,
then
like the fact that you're intaking air or oxygen, but then you're breathing it all out, like how the fact you're trying to
yes,
intake as much oxygen as possible, how much are you retaining of that, right?
that's the
That's the
key,
question.
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you went through then Dr. Buteko's work, you've obviously come across carbon dioxide. Do you remember the Bohr effect?
Yeah, I recall that. Yeah, I know that.
Will we go through it?
Uh, well, I recall that carbon dioxide is actually very important. Everyone thinks that you technically it's a byproduct and you don't need it and you have to exhale it. But in fact, you do need it if you want to make sure that that oxygen gets transferred from the air into your blood, right? So
From the blood to the tissues.
to muscles. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's amazing, isn't it, that runners don't know that? Like it's and it's not being critical. I just feel that there's something that's so obvious. You know that that effect was discovered in 1904, the Bohr effect. So basically, as carbon dioxide pressure increases in the blood pH drops slightly, and hemoglobin, which are the red blood cells, release oxygen more readily. So when you're breathing through your nose during physical exercise, the carbon dioxide can't leave the body through the nose because the nose is smaller, so that you
Mm.
breathe less air. So as a result, there's higher carbon dioxide in the blood with nasal breathing. And it's the increased carbon dioxide that allows more oxygen to be delivered to the working muscles. That's why the runner doesn't need as much ventilation. But initially, it's coming back to what you said in your first 4 weeks, it was tougher because now there's an increased carbon dioxide, but carbon dioxide is the driver to breathe. So
Mm.
you didn't feel a fear that, because you're pretty competitive, Um, most athletes won't step back 10%, and I'm assuming you had to slow down maybe 10 or 15%. How did you overcome that psychologically?
I mean, at that point, I wasn't as competitive, or I did not know that I was competitive. I haven't done even any ultra race, so I was kind of exploring myself and trying to make myself more efficient, and I was going by feel. So slowing down, I probably slowed down more than 10-15%. It wasn't a big deal because, I just wanted to trust the process and everything that I've learned. I knew that it would come. It's just you need some patience. And thankfully, it was, I guess, the early stages of my growth as an ultra runner where I had that time buffer, so I could improve myself before I even step into any competitive world of ultra running.
Did your nose run, which
Oh
is
yeah,
common? Do you
it,
remember,
it,
was there a lot of mucus from coming from your nose when you first switched to nose breathing, that transition?
it still is
It
sometimes,
still is. Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah,
normal. So
yeah.
these are the things that'll put people off as well. This is a normal thing. So it's just one of those things.
That's right. Yeah.
How did you feel post physical exercise? So you were saying that there was some benefits. Okay, you got an increased runner's high. How do you feel about your recovery post physical exercise and even your heart rate recovery post physical exercise? Did you look at that?
Yeah. Again, it's just I link breathing with having really low heart rate, or the heart rate where you're not over exercising any of your systems, and In fact, I also link it to my nutrition, where I know that I'm burning fats the most going at this heart rate as a result of nose breathing. So yeah, once I finish my run, sometimes you keep breathing with your nose, and nothing's changed. Your heart is not jumping out of your body. You're not stressed or overstressing your system. So the day after, you wake up and okay, you're ready for another run. The whole idea and the point of training that is frequently overlooked is that uh, you want to make yourself better. You don't want to destroy your body, and then you just need to heal, right? You want to stress, recover, stress, recover, and make it stronger. But if you do over exercise, you do over breathe, you run all the time fast and breathe through your mouth and it's jumping out. At the end of the day, your body's stressed. And you need to recover from that for a longer term, but you're trying to build yourself up for the race. And eventually, what happens, many people overtrain, under recover, and they are absolutely done before they even start the race, and they start the race and they have a horrible experience, which I've never had. All races I've done, I had amazing experience. I always get that runner's high, and I like to surf it and cruise for hours, sometimes days. And I attribute it to this training strategy that I've approached, or I've adopted. I don't know if it worked for everyone. It works for me, and I gladly share with anyone about it.
I think the basic principle is going to work for everybody, given that we have all pretty much a similar physiology, give or take, that kind of
Yeah,
way with the nose. Um, Muscle soreness post physical exercise, is there a comparison there, mouth breathing versus nose breathing? Was there anything you picked up on it?
it's hard to say if there's any difference. I mean,
Sure.
depending on the exercise, sometimes I would do hard, really long hours exercise of climbing, descending. So I would feel sore, but is it from, nose breathing, or is it because I pushed too hard, or maybe I didn't have enough water or food? It's hard to see the correlation there. So yeah, yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah, I got
know.
you.
Yeah.
Your typical, I suppose, for people who are listening, your race, the race that was 717 kilometers and you came second, that's going back about 6 months or so, isn't it? Or
Yeah, it was in
thereabouts.
October.
October. Can you kind of talk us through that a little bit? What was the terrain? How many competitors was it? Over how many days? Just a little bit of your experience there.
Sure. Yeah, it is a unique format. It's masterminded by Lazarus Lake, same race director as the Barkley marathons that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So the idea of the race is that you run this loop of 6.7 kilometers, or 4.16 miles, every hour on an hour, until you are either quit or you are the last man standing. So the idea behind the distance is that every 24 hours you end up running 100 miles, and you keep going until you're the last man standing. That's what it's called. Yeah. So what happened in October is that the best ultra runners in this format from all over the world came over to Tennessee, to the actual backyard of Laz, to compete against each other. And we had 75 people from all over the world start at the same time, run. The bell rings, so you got to start on the top of the hour. You have to complete this distance within an hour. If you do it within 40 minutes, great. You got 20 minutes to rest until the next hour. And you can do whatever you want within 20 minutes. But when the bell rings and signals the beginning of the hour, you have to start the loop. And 6.7K doesn't sound like a long distance, but well, if you do it for hours, for days and nights at a time, at the end, it's getting really hard to actually complete this distance within an hour. So many people time out, many people fall asleep, they get delirious, because there's no no long-term break. So you can't sleep for hours. You do have a few minutes if you wish. You can lay down and nap at night or whenever, but then at the top of the hour you have to start 6.7K. So what happened in Tennessee is that we ended up going 450 miles or 4.5 days. So 5 days and 4 nights nonstop pretty much. And that was a new world record. And Harvey Lewis, my friend from USA, he was able to get the new world record and cover 450 miles with running
It's
for
nuts.
5 days and 4 nights. Yeah, if you try to kind of process it does sound incredibly a lot. I know it's been 4.5 days or 5 nights, 4 days, 4 nights, but it all seems like it was just a couple seconds in my head now. But it was a pretty incredible journey there. Yeah.
And can I ask, coming towards say day 3 and day 4, so you have to do the 4 miles on the hour. Were there times that the 4 miles was taking the entire hour, so you got literally no break before you had to kick off again? Or were you always able to snatch 10 or 15 minutes of sleep or downtime?
Yeah, so we had two different courses, day course and night course. Day course was on the trail and it was a bit technical. There was some climbing involved. So day course would take longer and I was always trying to bang for 53 minutes because that's what I've been doing for, at the previous races and it worked for me. I found that I don't really need too much time in the camp just because over time, if you spend too much time sitting or laying, your muscles start seizing up and it gets really hard to get going again. So eventually I found this 53-minute mark is what working for me. So it's enough time to rehydrate, refuel, change shoes, socks if needed, and get going. Whereas at the nighttime, though, we were running on the road, so it was less technical, not much climbing. So we could have covered that distance a bit faster, but not too much faster. I did 49 minutes on average at night. And the idea is that I would have some time to sleep. So I would do the night loop, come to the camp, lay down, sleep for 9 minutes, get up, do it again. So in that way, you kind of try to get some sleep in. I know it's hard to imagine, okay, how do you sleep 9 minutes at a time and can get going, but eventually your brain and your body is so tired that the second you lay down, it just turns off like instantly. I was dreaming every time I would nap for 9 minutes. I would dream. So I wake up and then you get going. So yeah, I haven't had a single hour where I would have to fight for the cutoff. Basically, it would always be somewhere between 50 minutes and 54 minutes. So I would always have a few minutes to spare. There were runners who were definitely, they wouldn't give up until they actually time out, and many of them wouldn't make it on time. Yeah, so it does happen quite often.
But I'm sure it does. Was your mouth open or closed during sleep?
I'm pretty sure it was close because my crew, she was monitoring me and I was very quiet. And yeah, speaking of sleeping, by the way, so back in the day when I was trying to switch to nose breathing, I would go, all in with that idea. I was trusting the process and I was taping my mouth. So at night, I'm pretty sure I never snore, or I don't think I did. And, my girlfriend telling me that I'm usually quiet, but I wanted to make sure that I'm actually doing it day and night properly. So at the beginning, I was taping my mouth religiously, and she was weirded out first, but then she got used to it. But yeah, I can tell now. Now I don't tape it because I know for sure that I sleep with my mouth closed. I know that's the different feeling and taste in your mouth when you sleep with your mouth open and closed. And my sleep got better too, which I noticed that very fast within a couple of weeks. Yeah, I when I was doing that race, of course, I didn't take my mouth, but by then I'm pretty sure I breathe with my nose during the day and at night.
Yeah. Sleep is deeper with your mouth closed. So I'm
That's
just
right.
wondering if some of your competitors had their mouth open during sleep, they mightn't have the same degree of recovery. It's kind of weird with breathing because breathing is that one that you carry with you all the time.
Right.
And, I suppose the fact that you've looked at your breathing during sleep, you've really delved into your breathing during your movement. And do you pay attention to your breathing during rest? Did you use the reduced volume breathing or breathe light exercise? Did you do any of the breath hold practices?
Before when I was just getting into it.
Yeah, just in your normal everyday life. So say for example, outside of your runs, when you're sitting at home and you have 5 minutes to spare, just breathing less air to condition yourself towards the higher tolerance of CO2.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said, Patrick. I would every day. So I work in the office. So every day I would have 5 to 10 minute break where I would focus on my breathing, where I would just slow down, make sure I don't overbreathe, and I do have these breathing exercises that basically that derived from the ones you have in the book, and I've been using pretty much the same exercising religiously for years now. And every 5 to 10 minutes, I would have this break. And in fact, my coworkers around me, they can hear me kind of breathe. And when I get quiet, they know that I'm doing my breathing exercises. And I like to make sure there's no breaks, unless of course the phone call I have to, answer. But they know that they shouldn't bother me, and that within the next 5 to 10 minutes I'm doing these exercises and I'm focusing on my breathing. And it's very interesting because I always end up, taking off the upper layers because your body gets warmed up, which is amazing,
Amazing, isn't
to
it?
it is, yeah.
Yeah. That's what got me into it. It was back maybe 25 years ago, or quite a while ago anyway. I was practicing the breathe light exercise, breathing less air,
Yeah.
and my hands started getting warmer. I always had cold hands and cold feet, and it's kind of, I suppose the weird thing about it, Ihor, is that what Dr. Buteyko discovered flies in the face of how breathing is typically taught. And I think that's maybe why people are getting confused because, typically the idea is breathe more air. The more air you breathe, the more oxygen that's being delivered. But of course, what we're saying is no, it's not about the oxygen coming into the body. It's about what the body does with that oxygen. And this is where carbon dioxide plays the key role. But there's much more to it than that, in terms of autonomic nervous system, nitric oxide that you picked up on, sleep, I think is a huge one. The ability to regulate states, recovery, heart rate variability, vagus nerve stimulation. So there's a lot going on there. I'm going to roll on to do you find is your mind quieter? Do you ever consider that? So you were doing it because I suppose you had a challenging transition. Anybody moving from a country such as Ukraine over to Canada, it's a huge transition. You were young, you're only 21 years of age. So it would be likely that overthinking, would be the norm. Do you feel as in terms of breathing practice? I know during your run you're saying you're getting your runner's high. Do you notice any change in terms of mind activity in your normal everyday life, in terms of a reduced thought activity, or maybe what does that translate to into your normal everyday life?
Yeah, I found it uh, working just like meditation, where very often when you're practicing meditation, it's all about breathing, just because you're having that tunnel vision and tunnel focus just in your breathing. So when you just have your thoughts focus on breathing, you basically shield yourself from everything else around and not letting bad thoughts, or ideas or anything that might, penetrate those walls to get in. And when you do so, your mind is at peace, right? Because there's nothing else going on. It's just you're breathing, and you're focused on this exercise. So yeah, answering your question, it definitely it is making difference in the way you think, and what's going on in your head again. And when you couple it with a bit lower heart rate, with run, I mean, this is what makes you happy, and this is why I run.
So now I want to bring you into the race itself, because I would sometimes feel with some athletes, the mind can kind of sabotage performance because the mind is kind of saying, "Oh God, you're really pushing it. You're not able to do it. You'll never do this. This guy is doing much better than you do. You didn't start off right." How did you find your mind in during the race, or what did you do? Did self-doubts creep in? Thoughts will creep in,
Yeah,
but did you
there,
follow
there's
them?
yeah, there's nothing you can do with those thoughts. I mean,
Yes.
even elite runners, professional runners, they get them. They just know how to deal with them. They in fact they expect them, and when they arrive, they deal with them. And the thing with ultra running, it's so no matter how strong you are physically, no matter what training block you're gonna put in leading up to the race, eventually you will be in pain. You will be in physical pain. So eventually it will become mental. Pain is good, but pain is basically telling hey, something's wrong with your body. I think you need to stop because what you're doing is hurting. But that's where your mind comes into play, and your mind overrides all the pain, saying, hey, I'm actually racing, I'm trying to accomplish this goal. How about I forget about this pain and I'll keep going and I'll think about it later. And yeah, so all the ultra races, they're all mental. Ask anyone. You start with your body, but you finish with your brain. You finish with your heart. You finish with your mental strength, and that is what usually differentiates elite runners, or those that uh, continuously successful in all these tough efforts. And those people come back and they keep doing and they keep achieving these great feats of endurance. That these people are mentally strong. I mean, obviously they're physically strong, but they're mentally, because at the end it's all your brain versus your body, and whoever is gonna win, that's gonna define the way your race is gonna progress and end. uh, so again, when I'm trying to kind of extend this fight later into the race by doing all these, by breathing slow, by breathing in my nose, keeping my heart rate as low as possible, using my nutrition wisely, and but eventually you hit the spot where you got to start fighting with your body, and especially in the efforts like going 4 nights, 5 days with no sleep, nonstop running. I mean, your body's gonna get tired. There's it's not easy. Everything is gonna hurt. Everything is gonna ache. But this is, where your mental strength comes into play, where you start overriding all these signals that your body is giving you, and you just stay focused on your final goal.
Is your final goal to win, or is your focus on the process? So where is your attention during it?
Yeah. When I got into trail running, I didn't know that I would be competitive. It came as a bonus. I usually focus on delivering or driving, drawing as much effectiveness and efficiency from my body as possible. I'm trying to literally achieve as much as possible that my bodies, my mind are capable. I usually don't focus on winning. I do focus on the race and having the great race and trying to basically do my best, everything I can do. And very often it ends up that I'll be, in the leading pack or something like that. And yeah, I never thought about it at first, but, you know, uh, they say that you shouldn't focus on winning, because if you start focusing on winning, you're gonna stress out about it, and it's gonna everything is gonna go sideways. You gotta focus on your goal. You gotta focus, basically on this journey, and to make sure on the race itself. If you focus on the race itself and how it progresses, eventually the result will tag along, and that's uh, what's happened to me multiple times.
It's a bit like life. Focus on the process. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's moving forward, Barkley race, and it was funny, the first female that completed it, we all seen the photographs. And fair play to her. What an amazing feat.
Yeah,
And you won it.
history.
So
Well,
a little bit about that, or maybe if I didn't get it right, I thought you did, but just a little bit about that race, because it's quite different, isn't it?
yeah, it's a unique race, and it's been around since 1986. It has a lot of history behind it, has a lot of glory about it, and it is a secret race technically. Everyone knows about it, but nobody knows how to get in. There's no website where you can, go online, sign up, or there's no instructions on how to get in. So the quest of Barkley starts with figuring out how to get into Barkley. And many people try for years and they can't, because there is little details, and there's not too much info available, but it is there. You just have to dig for it. If you really want to get into Berkeley, you can figure out how to, and
So
that's
this
what
is
race.
even just to apply for it.
Yeah, yeah, you can't, like, if you Google apply for Berkeley, you'll find nothing. You you just have to dig in deeper and beyond all those links, on Google. But there is a way to figure it out. You just have to be really passionate about it, I guess, and really persistent. Um, but yeah, what the race director of Barkley said once, if you really belong to Barkley, you'll figure out your way to get into. And that's the thing. Yeah, so it's a unique race again. 40 people, usually 40 people get invited on annual basis. Um, and it happens in the Frozen Head State Park in Tennessee. Uh, and so basically what this race is all about, you do 5 loops to complete it. Each loop is around a marathon distance. That's why the name Barkley Marathons. And you end up climbing or gaining around 4,000 meters per loop. So at the end of the race, you end up climbing 20,000 meters and descending 20,000 meters. So that's more than 2 times climbing Everest within 120, 130 miles. And what adds to the challenge is that it's not on the trail, it's actually mostly off trail. And you are not allowed to have GPS, you are not allowed to have watches, phones, anything that might help you to navigate. The only thing you can have is your map and compass. So it is a sort of orienteering race to an extent. It has that component. And so you do these 5 marathons back to back, nonstop, while climbing 20,000 meters off trail. And just to let you know, off trail there is horrible. It's covered in briars, rocks, mud. It's steep as heck. It's covered with leaves, so the traction is really bad. And if you add, and usually the weather there is bad. So it either rains, it's foggy. We were lucky this year. The weather was pretty much perfect. But most of the time, it adds the bad weather. And that's why sometimes there's no finishers for years. I think between 2018 and 2023, yeah, there was no finishers for many years.
Nobody finished at all.
Nobody can finish it. Yeah, that's how hard. It's right on the edge of possible and impossible. That's basically the idea and seed that race director Laz Lake put into Barkley. That it's so hard that if you do finish, you're going to be like this close to the cutoff, which is 60 hours for 5 loops. And most of the time, most likely you won't finish, basically. So it's called the race that eats its young, because over almost 40 years, there have been only 20 finishers. So only 20 people finished this race, and since 1986, which is insane. The finishing rate is like below 1%. And
It's amazing.
no other race has that dark statistics, and that's why everyone is many people want to attempt it and see like why is it so, like what's so hard about it. And once you get in, you kind of realize that that's why it's so horrible, so hard. Like, so besides physical challenge of covering this much distance over this little time, you do have to use your brain to navigate, because there's no markings, there's no course marshals, there's pretty much no trails, very little trails, mostly off trail. So when you end up going for days and nights with no sleep, covering this brutal terrain, the last thing you want to do is think. You just want to kind of follow their markers and get it done, but you cannot turn off your brain, because then you're going to get lost. You get lost, you're done. Or you make a little mistake, you're done. And so you have to stay focused for so many hours at a time in order to complete this challenge. And it was amazing what happened this year, because 5 people finished it, including Jasmine Paris from Scotland. And she became the very first female to complete this race. It's been done only by males. Many females attempted it, but she's the first one to do it. And in fact, the race director once said that females are not capable of completing Barkley, yet she proved him wrong, and she made history out there. And I was very lucky to witness it, because she set this example for, entire female population. They're saying that, hey, it is possible. You know what? Like, don't listen to him. Like, you can do hard things. And she was running pretty much being equal with us, man, physically. She was always with us. She was always thinking clear, which is amazing, but it did take almost everything out of it, for every single drop of energy. But she did it. She accomplished it. She accomplished the impossible. She had only 99 seconds to spare, so the race of 60 hours came down to seconds.
Wow.
And yeah.
And she was 40 years of age, and females' breathing is different than men. So physiologically, females are a slight disadvantage because of increased turbulent airflow, because they've got narrower airways. So for a female to do the same work effort, they have to breathe harder. They have to put in more energy associated with breathing than with a man. I think that was discovered about 2 or 3 years ago. So taking that into consideration, it's important, just that the airways for women are different than the airways for men. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Did you know, Bree? So the idea with that Barkley Marathon apparently was, one guy broke out of prison close enough to around that area, and he covered 9 or 10 miles in a specific amount of time. And of course, he would have had no trail. So that's what the whole, and I think when we talk about that, people then get a perspective. This is a prison break.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what gave the idea. The assassin of Martin Luther King, he escaped the prison, and I think he spent many days out there, and he just was a few miles away, just because he was running in circles, and the terrain was so hard, unforgiving, that he couldn't go far. So that's where our idea came from. Yeah, Laz said, oh, what if we put on this race in the same area and see how far the athletes can do, not the prisoner. And in fact, it's interesting, but the course goes underneath the prison, so we actually go through the tunnel right under that prison. So the prison is not in use anymore. It's just basically the monument of architecture right there, and historic monument, but the race course does go underneath the prison. And one of the books, so you have to collect books on the course, which is a proof that you went to that certain spot. So one of the books is right behind the prison. Yeah.
Wow. Were you able to maintain nose breathing? Did you adapt the same strategies with Barkley as you did? And by the way, when I said you came number one, did you come number one?
I did come number one, but the way it works with Barkley, or how it is in Barkley world, is that there can be winner in Barkley race just because the race is so hard that Barkley always wins. There can be only finishers, so we don't really say winner or second place. You know,
Yeah,
there's
I
no
gotcha.
there's no podium, so there's five finishers and we are all equal. I just
Amazing.
happened to arrive to the finish line a bit earlier than others. But again, if you look at the time, so my time was like 58 hours, 44 minutes. So really close to the cutoff too. So you never see anyone finishing it within like 50 hours or 51 hours. So even though you're going to work really hard, do everything possible, you're still going to be like this close to the cutoff. That's how crazy this race is. So it's on the edge. You even if you finish, you're gonna be this close to the cutoff. You know, you will never beat the course. Course usually always beats you, and you look at us finishers, we all look so bad. We got like cuts. We're barely moving there, and it's hard to say that someone is a winner when you when you look that
I
horrible.
totally know. I get it,
Uh,
Ihor. You know what's coming through my mind, and I still want to come back to the nose breathing. It's kind of like something that a special operation or special forces would train military. And these guys and women are doing it. That's their full-time occupation. Do they ever get involved with that race or would they be disallowed? Because that's their forte, navigating unfamiliar and challenging terrain.
I personally do not know anyone from that walk of life who did it, but it doesn't mean that they haven't attended. All people that I know that who've done it, they are just ultra runners, you know, who enjoy the challenge and appreciate the sport. But I see what you mean. I'm pretty sure maybe some of those people attempted it, and I have no idea. Like all the finishers that I know of, so 20 finishers, they do have regular jobs. They are not in special operations. They have full-time jobs. You know, even Jasmine, she's a vet, veterinarian in Scotland, and she's just a part-time ultra runner, you know, and one of the best in the world, if not the best. And it's pretty incredible to watch it too, and just people basically find time outside of their uh, jobs, you know, to train to accomplish these incredible feats.
Oh, it's amazing. My question on nose breathing, how did you
Yes.
fare? Because you have a scent, so that's obviously very challenging. And overall,
Yeah, Patrick. So we do have climbs. It's all you do. You either go up or down uh, during Barkley. And the way it works, I thought that would be really hard at the beginning. Everyone was going to be pushing super hard, but you know, given the distance that's coming up, you're trying to pace yourself somewhat smart. So all the climbs, it's all power hike. We don't run uphill. We power hike. It's a serious pace power hike, but we don't run. And then we run flats if there is any and downhills. So when I get into power hiking mode, I always breathe with my nose, unless it's you start running this steep hill, then I do need to. I feel like my heart rate is increasing, but Barkley pretty much did the whole thing with nose breathing. And couple times when the lead pack was trying to kind of pick up the pace and maybe move away a little bit, but I was trying not to get lost behind. I would have to pick up the pace, and that's the only time where I had to kind of use my mouth. But most of the time, it's all nice and easy nose breathing. And it's another thing when I'm in the group of people, I could listen around and hear the way they are breathing. And I hear it, you know, based on that, I know if the person is working hard. With me, it's really hard because you can't really hear me breathe, you know. So Like, is he working hard, or is it easy for him? It does sound like easy, right? But at at this point, I gotta go really hard, high heart rate if I need to open my mouth. Even just slightly more than average heart rate, I still use my nose, and it's really hard to hear what's going on. And that's another kind of uh, competitive edge that you can have over your opponents as you're racing. I always say that there is uh, it's really, it hits you mentally when you're being passed by someone who you cannot hear breathe. You know, you're passing someone, you're moving faster, and you're not even breathing heavy. What are you? And it hits you mentally, and when you can actually steal the soul of that person if you are in a competition. I'm not meaning Barkley, but say actual race where you're trying to pass people and try to move up the ranking there. And I've seen it sometimes happen often when I look at the person like, you look so good, I can't hear you breathe. Like, what's going on? Like, well, I always breathe this way, so nothing is going wrong. Nothing is going on.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's what you've been able to achieve in training with the human body. Um, do you think nose breathing will take off in sports? Like, I'm in this field 22 years, and since 2013, I that's when I started writing The Oxygen Advantage, and it was written specifically for men for mental health because I knew men at the time, in Ireland anyway, they weren't really into meditation. And there was a lot of angst because of the economic crash. So I said I need to write a book on breathing to get people out of their head, to improve blood flow and oxygen delivery to the brain, to improve their sleep, to bring a quietness to the mind. And the book is popular, but it still hasn't it's in terms of, I would still say 95% of athletes run with their mouth open, which doesn't make sense to me at all. All the stuff that you talked about, and more. It's really about training the human body to be more efficient with what they are taking in. That's what it is. Where do you
Yeah.
think it's going? I know you're going to help, by the way.
Well, we'll see. Patrick, I feel like with anything, um, with something, everything revolutionary is simple, and that applies to this breathing, but it always takes a lot of time for people to adopt something like that, because while it is conventional, it sometimes goes against, and again, just like you said, it's counterintuitive. You think you need to take in more air in, right? Um, so you got to open your mouth and try to, put in more, breathe in more. But that's not the way it works. That's not the science behind it. And because of this being so counterintuitive, I guess it's somewhat rewired in our brains that we don't really want to accept it, or it sounds odd. So it might take many, many years, and hopefully sooner than later, but eventually people, I think, rewire their brains, and or at least start to adopt this knowledge and this convention of nose breathing. And I do see it in some athletes, professional athletes. I know that Shakira Richards, the sprinter, the very famous sprinter, she's a 100-meter, 200-meter sprinter. She is nose breathing, even though she's going fast. She's the
Or
sprinter.
Sonia Richards Ross, is it, or Sonia Ross Richards? No?
Yeah. The sprinter, and she's incredible.
Yeah, she is.
She's the advocate of this in sports too, which to me, I found it interesting because she's a sprinter. Like, how you would think you need to open your mouth when you go that fast, right? But I
Yeah,
guess not the case.
anatomically, this is where anatomically, so she's African origin, isn't she? African lady or African American?
Uh,
Is she white
I
or is she black?
yes, yeah, I think she's African American. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they've shorter noses but larger nostrils because of the evolution during the climate. So
Oh, okay. I see.
she will find it anatomically easier to breathe through her nose than a Caucasian. We've longer noses and smaller nostrils because
Okay.
the air had to stay longer in the nose before it was warmed up before it came into the throat. And
Mm.
it didn't have to stay that long in the nose of an individual who was in a hotter climate. So,
Hmm.
and that's even for yourself. You didn't use nasal dilators or anything. You just went
Well, I thought,
natural.
and I spoke about it with Evan Birch, our mutual
Yeah,
friend, and
Evan, who had introduced us.
yeah, I asked him about these strips, and he just said that none of the strips really works well if you go far because of the sweat it comes
That's
off.
true.
But
Yeah.
he did suggest the dilator, and I haven't tried it yet. Maybe I should,
We'll
give it
send
a
you
try.
one. They
Sounds
don't, they
good
don't always stay in. I had one there soon, somewhere handy, but yeah, we'll send you on one. You can put it to the test. So I heard, listen, I'm so conscious of your time. Your family are they in Ukraine, or can you just give us a little bit of insight in there with what's going on over there? Or if you wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about it.
My parents are still in Ukraine. I came here by myself. I mean, both of them can come over here, stay with me if they want, but they just choose to be there because they're so used to, language, culture. They don't speak
Of
English, so
course.
it's really hard for them to fit in here. And they're both talkative people. They like to be a part of society. It's really hard for them to do that here. So they are fairly far away from the front lines. So where they are, it's relatively safe. They do get all the sirens and all the air attacks, that they usually flies either over or the side. So
So the
thankfully, knock on
missiles are
wood.
flying over them.
Yeah, yeah. So it happens often just because of the way they launch the missiles or those drones coming from Russia. But luckily, thankfully, knock on wood, our little town has been untouched, to an extent. And yeah, so they just learn to live with the war. I guess it's weird for us to comprehend it, but that's new reality that they live in, and they just accepted it. And they both go to work, so they just carry on with their lives. And I think I do believe that Ukraine will be independent and it will be free. And I know it's just a matter of time, and I know it's a matter of support of the civilized countries, and that's I'm a huge advocate of that, and that's why I always try to remind about Ukraine. We very often forget how lucky we are to live in, under the peaceful sky. And Ukraine is a small country, but it's proud, it's strong, and I know that Ukraine does need help of every single civilized country in this world, and eventually it will be victorious. And I know that we will see that.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a resilience and strength in Ukrainian people that is remarkable. And probably that's testimony to your ability to do your races. We've one of our employees is Ukraine. He's full time with us. He's really fitted in tremendously well. So, and we're a very small office. So yeah, so we have and of course Dr. Buteyko was Ukrainian. So I have quite a strong affiliation to Ukraine. And I wish you well, and I wish all of your family well. And of course, we would love to see it being resolved. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. It's a reflection of mankind, greed, power when it goes to people's heads. And unfortunately, yeah, you would think in this time of the world in 2024, things like that wouldn't be going on, but that's the way it is. So, yeah. Um, to close, I heard, listen, thanks very much for this conversation because there's a few great nuggets here. And I suppose the message, just final words from yourself in terms of anybody who wanted to think about it if they are a runner. Now they don't have to be ultramarathon runners, but anything, jogger, runner, anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know what? As I returned to work after Barkley, I got an email from my coworker, and she said, "Ihor, congrats! You inspired me to get out there and walk." And this is like one of my favorite messages that I like to get. This is the best reward for people like us, doing these crazy things. And I always say that ultra running is actually not healthy at all because you end up destroying your body, breaking down literally every single muscle in your body. So unless you're really interested in, sure, yes, go get into it. But technically, it's not healthy. So what I say, just be active. Step out there, get out of the house, go for a walk, take your dog for a walk, go for a jog. You don't have to go 10, 20 kilometers. Go 1, 2K jog around your block. You'll notice the difference. Go out there, bike, do some rowing, go to the gym. Just stay active. Do not be still. Do not spend time on the couch. Find yourself some time during the day. I know it's hard with the family, with work, and how crazy, busy, and fast-paced life is. But I can guarantee you that if you find those 30, 60 minutes every day for yourself, for your body, for your mind to get better, to kind of, shake yourself off a bit, the quality of your life will increase dramatically. And everything, not only, I find that what I do in sports helps me at work. It helps me with personal life, because I set those goals. I like to achieve them during the race. I set those goals at work. I like to achieve them too, and I won't give up. So you'll find the correlation between you being active and all the other lines of your life. It will definitely help you. And if people like myself can motivate you or anyone out there, this is the biggest reward for me. It means more than winning any races, because I know that if I can change someone's life, or at least push him or her in the right direction, it's amazing. What else can you ask from this life? Because reward is just something tangible. But if you can change someone's life, or help out or inspire, I can't ask for anything else. There's nothing else better in this world.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Ihor.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for listening to the Oxygen Advantage podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and maybe take the time to leave us a review. The Oxygen Advantage podcast is available from all your podcast providers.